with Paul Harding, who's famously the architect for the Plemont development, which is, here it is, it's got planning permission, planning approved. After how many years, Paul?
Well, 6 years on this current scheme, but 14 years since I've got involved in the site, Mike.
14 years.
Yes, a long time.
Psychologically, for you, you've been involved, ups and downs, battle all the way. Does it affect you personally?
There have been times where I have to question myself, am I doing the right thing? Is it going to make an improvement in my scheme? Is this the right solution? And we have explored lots of solutions to arrive at the one that has been finally approved by the Planning Minister based on the inspector's recommendation. I think you have to retain an objectivity as an architect and be prepared to listen to criticism and comment and take it on board where it's justified, but then be able to respond objectively to criticism and comment where it's not. So you do get a thick skin, that's for certain.
You've got to satisfy a lot of people. I think you can only satisfy one master generally, but you've got a client, that's the first thing. You've got to satisfy what the client wants or is prepared to do. Yeah. Is that difficult or easy in this particular case?
Quite often you have to talk to clients and explain to them, communicate to them what the criteria is, what has got to be achieved. What the public are going to say, what sort of general comment you might get from consultees, the State of Jersey Environment Department, highways and such like. And so sometimes you have to actually massage your client's expectations. And I had to do that on this site and say to them, look, we've got to create something that opens up as much of the site to natural landscape as possible, that will be given to the public of the island as public landscape in perpetuity, and we've got to create a scheme that fits in with that landscape, so yeah, it did take some work on a couple of occasions actually managing the client's expectations, that applies to any project.
The client are human beings as well. The people who actually own this, beneficial owners, have they been caught up in the argy-bargy, or they stood well back from it?
They've always said to me that we don't want to get into argy-bargy. The first message I had from them when I met them out at Plemont Holiday Village was, we want to create something that will be a big improvement to this area, that removes the existing blot on the landscape of the old holiday camp buildings and creates an environmental improvement. And so effectively that was their first brief. Of course, they being human people and in business, they want to see a return on their money. So they had to then see what we could achieve given that criteria. And in December 2005, I met the then Director of Planning, Peter Thorne, up at Plemont Holiday Village, and with him sketched out the 3-cluster solution, which is now what is approved. Yes, clients do have their own aspirations, but those have to be curtailed and encompassed within the context of competing public interest and the environment, and creating what the inspector agreed would be a substantial environmental improvement.
You've now got a planning approval. Presumably you're going to test the market for houses of the type and size that you've got. Is that being done, or are you just going to proceed now?
That's being looked at, and my client wants to get on with the scheme as soon as possible. To a certain extent, the site is unique. I think it is unique because there's never been new houses built in this area in living memory. So it's a new market, it's an untested market. It's got, would you want a house that's quite a long way from town, but not that much further than a lot of other housing in St One and around the parish of St Brelot, for example, or St Peter's. But you're right round the corner from Great Beach. You've got Plemont Beach on your doorstep, the North Coast footpath, and the big wild open expanse of Leyland and Grosvenor just around the corner. So it's a great location, and I think it will be very attractive. Certainly in the past we've had quite a lot of interest from people wanting to buy a house in this area.
You've now got your planning permit, so you can be generous to the planning office now, but there's been quite a lot of criticism in the past few weeks, the town development of Masriers, about the stickiness of the planning process and how it hinders people. The whole planning is not just that the process, it's the mentality which attaches to planning. Why do people have to get so much intimate approval for what they want to do on their land? What's the public benefit from it all?
Well, the whole fundamental purpose of planning control is to balance the interests of the landowner and the applicant against the interest of the general public, and the social aspects of that. The planning department are in a very difficult position. They're always going to get criticised, whatever they do, because either one side's going to criticise them, like the Masriers, or the other side's going to criticise them, like the people from the general public, or the lobby groups, like the National Trust for Jersey. So it's a very fine balancing act that the planning department has to perform. There are inefficiencies in the system. There could be improvements made, but there's always going to be a bit of inertia in the system, purely because the general public have to be consulted, and very often it's the lobby groups that actually cause the delays and the additions to a brief, and the requirement, for example, at Plemont Holiday Village, we had to go and get a specialist puffing report. Who can imagine that? You know, trying to find an expert on puffins for a start. And,
well, this was noticeably a public exercise, and every Tom, Dick and Harry in the island was encouraged, invited to make comment on things such as the aesthetic design of the buildings.
Yeah.
Now that's an extraordinary development of the planning interference in people's rights to do what they want with their own land, the old concept. And for example, you can buy a bus. There was a competition locally to design the outside of the bus, but buses aren't subject to aesthetic control. They appear on the streets, and cars, they can be in any colour you want. Yeah. There isn't this control over vacuum cleaners and every other object that we seem to buy. We make our own decisions. Yeah. What's gone so different about the planning process? We have this incredible public participation.
Too much public participation in some ways, because I think there was a time when it wasn't seen to be democratic enough, and people didn't have access to public meetings, the decided applications, for example, and now it's open house, as you say. You know, anybody can, without any design expertise or qualifications, can not only criticise the public interest aspects of a scheme, but also the architecture and the detailing. And there are so many fingers in the pot. You've got the...
Well, this is why I asked you initially about psychologically from you. You've been preparing schemes for this site for 14 years. You've obviously put your heart into a lot of them. You say, oh, I'd like to build that, that looks interesting, I'm pleased with that. And it's this incredible ups and downs cycle that goes on. And then the public, everybody is entitled to encouraged to criticise your designs, isn't it? I mean, you're a professional man. You wouldn't deal with the doctor when he's about to put the scalpel on you, would you?
I might ask him what he's doing, but you know, I wouldn't challenge his decision. I think it's part of the information age, isn't it, where there is so much access to all sorts of information that everybody considers themselves to be an expert at times, and the balance in terms of making planning decisions has swung too far the other way. I think there needs to be much more guidance for the general public and for other campaign groups on what aspects they can legitimately comment on, and what aspects should be reserved for the professionals. The planning officers who are trained in assessing design to assess themselves.
Well, there's a whole public department there to look after the public interest without encouraging all the public yet again to comment. The public inquiry itself, you tell me a little bit about that. Who actually paid for that in the end, to bring over an inspector from the UK and to have that several
The
days?
Environment Department.
Does that get put onto your client's fee, or?
No, because that was part of the planning process. I mean, the client has paid substantially more than the cost of the inquiry, which is about 36,000, and that's just for the planning department side. But he's paid substantially more than that in application fees, and effectively now, with the increase in fees over the years, the application fees that are paid by landowners for their applications to be processed and decided are paying for the department, or that part of the department. So the actual load, the financial load, is borne by the landowner. You've
got a victory in the sense you've got a planning permit, and the planning inquiry went in favour. It said the development should go ahead. It could have gone the other way, but looking back, did it actually add anything to the process, having a planning inquiry? Do you think it was a useful exercise?
Yes, because it enabled the decision to be made by an expert in assessing planning applications. Somebody that has got a great deal of experience in hotly contested applications, and so the decision was taken out of the planning minister's hands. Once the inspector said to the minister, "You should approve it," based on very good grounds, then the minister had no choice.
But the same could be said for virtually any application. You get a disgruntled applicant, they get refused.
Yes.
They can't all ask for a planning inquiry, but they all come up against this same problem of having a biased, in their perception, local planning process, don't they?
Well, that's true. Not every application is going to go to an inquiry. There's going to be a few now and then. I think the rules has been set that any major application that has got some aspects which don't quite meet the Ireland Plan policies as they're written should go to a public inquiry. The Minister has called for one into the retirement housing in St One's village.